The purpose of demand analysis is to actually forecast, i.e., look ahead at what products or services will be needed, and of course, when. Often organizations just go with context, but you need to understand your demand. Without that, you can't then drop it down into actionable plans. We need to consider stakeholder expectations, more recently, climate change, sustainability in whatever dimension that is for your organization, but also technology trends, IT, OT. We need to understand how the current assets are working together to support services and product delivery. Can they meet demand today? Can they meet demand into the future? Using demand scenarios that can guide investment, whether that's capital investment for something new, whether that's operational investment for keeping things going, how we plan, and of course, addressing those asset management objectives. Whenever we're forecasting, we're looking into the future, stargazing, looking through the crystal ball. And there is a real risk that staff will struggle to see, understand, and trust how those demand forecasts were actually created, what was their basis, and how can they possibly contribute. A way around that and to resolve this uncertainty, ambiguity, and sometimes mistrust is to build in those transparent assumptions. If there is an assumption that the demand will be something due to an event externally, an event internally, put it out there. It also supports your risk management, opportunity management, but then you get the opportunity then for people to challenge some of those ideals, assumptions, and even constraints. So again, involving stakeholders in some of this scenario planning not only builds more accuracy into your forecasting, it actually aligns your organization and underpins the coordinated activity of your organization. When considering demand analysis, we come back to the basis of stakeholder needs and, of course, stakeholder expectations. It's not unusual, and in a way it should be encouraged, that different stakeholders will have different views. Sometimes they may be conflicting views of what the future demand might look like, should look like. So again, we come back to engagement, creating that consultation to balance the needs of various stakeholders. And of course, your capability within the organization is also a stakeholder collectively. So then you can actually start to think about, well, what are the needs? What are the expectations? And of course, what are the trade-offs? And if you communicate them visibly, transparently, you are going to create more buy-in from stakeholders, both internal and external. While demand might be considered coming down onto an organization or approaching from the front of the organization, demand is actually disseminated across the organization, which therefore leads us to how different functions are integrated. When we look at demand analysis, the real risk here is if we do it in silo, for instance, only look at it through operational, only looking at it, say, through people and culture, only look at it through, say, design and construct, we're really missing something here. Because external demand translates to internal demand, and that integration and understanding that is so critical. So again, facilitating cross-functional workshops, understanding the demand, and it gives an opportunity for different functions of the organization to raise their hand and say, I need a varying capability, or I have the capability, I just need more capacity. Builds trust, but also integration underpins alignment and also the coordinated activity of the organization. An organization can either react, can respond, or it can lead. Being able to adapt to emerging trends as they start to manifest is critical for any organization. The real risk here is the organization just ignores some of these triggers and symptoms of what's changing around them. It could be a climate change, some of that digital technology, operational technology, cybersecurity. It could be legislation, regulatory, whatever it might be. Population change, for instance. But what we need to do is have a mechanism built in that we actually scan the horizon, using the context of our organization as the baseline, if you like, going out and looking at what's out there in the market that could actually trip us up in the future, looking at different scenarios, and then feeding that into the demand analysis. Because not only does it actually look at how we adapt, it's a great way to link your change risk and opportunity register together. Another perspective of demand analysis could actually be the changing or the shifting of how we deliver our services and products with various types of capability. We might move away from, say, insourcing to outsourcing. An example here would be from a supply-driven model to a customer-driven focus model. What we need to do to get around this and navigate this is really providing training, communication, and always coming back to the why behind an organization's response to changes and how that manifests out to demand. But we need to invite our workers with that, otherwise we risk disengagement and resistance. There can be nothing more distracting or annoying to an organization when a lot of demand workshops, forecasts are actually done, good discussions occur, but then they're simply ignored and not used to inform investment and planning decisions. That's the real risk, and unfortunately, I see it quite often. So what we need to be able to do is then a further hook to link those demand scenarios back into strategy, which is the why are we doing it, planning in terms of what, and capital as one form of resource to where we actually do allocate that in our investments across the various life cycles of the organization. So again, making sure that the inputs to your investments, your decision making, come from your demand forecast, and it's obvious to those stakeholders involved. Considering the alignment back to 55,001 or section 4.1, understanding the organization and its context is obviously key. You could even argue that 4.2 would be very front and center here in terms of stakeholder needs and expectations. 6.2, actions to address both risk and opportunity. And as we know, 55,001 and 2024 separated the two considerations. And then, of course, 8.1, operational planning and control, including life cycle management. So that kind of looks at the services, it looks at the assets, but also the capability and the capacity of the organization to deliver. So in summary, demand analysis helps organizations predict future needs so they can prepare assets and resources to deliver value sustainably. It is as simple as that. But like section 4.1 in ISO, context of the organization, this 3.2 under the landscape demand analysis is real critical. And if it's not done or assumed, an organization can set itself up for some big expenses, increased risk, and loss of performance, i.e. value.